You speak English. Your grammar is correct. Your sentences are clear. And yet, something still feels off. You walk into a meeting. You understand every word. You say what you prepared to say. But when the conversation moves on, you feel invisible. Not ignored, not rejected, just not included. You start to wonder, quietly, is my English really good enough? Here's the confusing part. People don't correct you. No one says your English is bad. No one asks you to repeat yourself. But somehow opportunities pass you by. Your ideas don't land the way you expect. Connections don't go deeper. And slowly, you begin to doubt yourself. If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. Many non-native English speakers come to America believing one simple thing. If I speak English well, everything will work out. That belief makes sense. It's logical. And it's incomplete. Because in America, English is not just a language. It's a system of signals. A way of showing confidence. A way of showing intention. A way of showing that you belong in the conversation. And most language learners are never taught that part. Schools teach you how to be correct. Life in America rewards you for being effective. There is a difference. You can say the right words with the wrong timing. You can sound polite and still sound uncertain. You can speak fluently and still not be fully understood. This is not about accent. This is not about intelligence. And this is definitely not about working harder at grammar. It's about something deeper. It's about how Americans listen, what they expect between the lines, and what they assume, often unconsciously, when you speak. In this video, we're not going to talk about vocabulary lists. We're not going to talk about test scores, and we're not going to talk about perfect English. We're going to talk about why English that sounds correct sometimes doesn't work in America. And more importantly, what actually does. Let's begin. Part 1. Fluency is not the same as function. Many people believe fluency is the finish line. If you can speak smoothly, if you don't pause too long, if your sentences sound natural, then you must be communicating well. But in America, fluency is only the surface. You can speak fluently and still not get results. Because fluency answers one question. Can you speak? Function answers a different one. Does what you say actually work? This is where many non-native speakers get stuck. They focus on sounding smooth. They focus on not making mistakes. They focus on choosing the right words. And they miss something more important. In American communication, people listen for purpose. Why are you saying this? What do you want to happen next? What role are you taking in this moment? If your words don't make that clear, your English may sound fine, but your message feels incomplete. Here's a simple example. A fluent speaker might say, I think maybe this idea could be interesting. The grammar is correct. The sentence is smooth. But to an American listener, it sounds uncertain. It sounds like the speaker is stepping back from their own idea. Now compare that to, this idea could solve the problem we discussed earlier. Still simple English. Still correct. But the function is different. One sounds like a suggestion floating in the air. The other sounds like a contribution to the conversation. In America, people are trained, often unconsciously, to respond to function, not form. They react to clarity. They react to direction. They react to confidence that feels natural, not forced. This is why many learners feel frustrated. They think, I said everything correctly. Why didn't it land? Because correctness doesn't tell people how to respond. Function does. Another mistake is over-explaining. Many non-native speakers believe that more words equal more clarity. So they add details, they add background, they add context no one asked for. But American communication values efficiency. People want to know, what is the point? Why does this matter now? What should we do next? When that's missing, fluency becomes noise. This doesn't mean Americans dislike accents. It doesn't mean they expect perfect English. It means they expect your language to do something, to move the conversation forward, to claim space, to signal participation. Fluency helps you speak. Function helps you be heard. And until you understand that difference, English in America will always feel like it's almost working, but never quite enough. Part 2. How Americans really listen. When you speak English in America, people are not listening the way you think. They are not analyzing your grammar. They are not checking your vocabulary. And most of the time, they are not even listening to every word. They are listening for signals. Americans are trained, since childhood, to communicate indirectly but expect clarity. That may sound contradictory, but it explains many misunderstandings. When an American listens, they are asking silent questions. Who is this person in the conversation? Are they confident or hesitant? Are they asking, suggesting, or deciding? Do they expect a response or approval? These questions are not conscious. They happen automatically. And your English answers them, even when you don't realize it. This is why two people can say similar sentences and get completely different reactions. For example, imagine you say, "I'm not sure, but maybe we can try this approach." To many non-native speakers, this sounds polite, careful, respectful. To an American listener, it often sounds like, "I don't fully believe in this idea." So they don't lean in. They don't ask follow-up questions. They move on, not because your English was bad, but because the signal was weak. In American communication, confidence is not about being loud or aggressive. It's about sounding certain enough to be taken seriously. People expect you to know why you're speaking. They expect you to own your words. Another important point, Americans listen for emotion, not dramatic emotion, subtle emotion, interest, frustration, commitment, distance. Even in professional settings, emotion is always present. When your English is flat, too neutral, too careful, it becomes harder for people to connect with you. They don't feel your intention. This is especially challenging for learners who were taught to remove emotion from language. In many cultures, neutral language equals respect. In America, neutral language can feel cold or unsure. So when Americans respond quickly, interrupt, or change topics, it doesn't mean they are rude. It often means they think the message is complete. They heard what they needed to hear, and if your signal didn't invite engagement, they won't stay. Understanding this changes everything. You stop asking, "Did I say that correctly?" And you start asking, "What signal did my English send?" Once you learn to hear your own language, the way Americans hear it, you stop feeling misunderstood. Not because you speak more, but because you speak with intention. Part 3. The culture hidden inside language. Language does not exist by itself. Every sentence carries culture inside it. Every tone carries a history. Every habit of speaking reflects how a society thinks. This is where many non-native speakers struggle. Without knowing why, they learn English words, they learn grammar rules, but they are never taught the cultural assumptions that come with using English in America. And those assumptions matter. In many cultures, indirect language shows respect. You soften your words. You avoid strong statements. You let others decide. In America, that same style can create confusion, because American culture values clarity over harmony. Not because Americans are rude, but because their society is built on individual responsibility. When you speak, people expect you to take ownership of your thoughts, your opinions, your role. So when you say something like, "I just wanted to share a small thought," what you may mean is, "I'm being polite." What Americans often hear is, "This idea is not important." The intention and the interpretation are different. Another common example is disagreement. In many cultures, disagreement is softened or delayed. You disagree indirectly or later, or not at all. In American culture, disagreement is often seen as engagement. If you don't respond, if you don't challenge, if you don't clarify, people may assume you agree, or worse, that you are not involved. This is why some non-native speakers feel overlooked in meetings. They are listening carefully. They are being respectful. They are waiting for the right moment. But the moment never comes. Because in American communication, you are expected to create your moment. There is also the idea of equality. Americans often speak casually with managers, professors, or seniors. This does not mean there is no hierarchy. It means hierarchy is expressed differently. Respect is shown through contribution, not distance. So when you stay quiet to show respect, it may be misunderstood as lack of confidence. This is not your fault. You are applying the rules you were taught. They just don't translate the same way. Understanding this cultural layer is not about changing who you are. It's about learning which parts of your communication need adjustment in a different environment. Once you see English as a cultural tool, not just a language, many confusing moments finally make sense, and you stop blaming yourself for problems that were never about grammar at all. Part 4. Workplace English is a different language. Many people arrive in America with strong English skills. They can read emails. They can follow presentations. They understand instructions. And yet, work still feels difficult. Not because of the job itself, but because workplace English follows different rules. The English you learn in school is designed to be safe, clear, neutral. Workplace English in America is designed to move things forward. In meetings, people are not just sharing information. They are showing ownership. They are showing leadership. They are showing where they stand. This is why silence is often misunderstood. In many cultures, staying quiet means you are listening. In American workplaces, staying quiet can mean you have nothing to add. It may not be true, but perception matters. Managers often listen for signals like, is this person engaged? Do they take initiative? Can they think independently? These signals are communicated through language. For example, compare these two responses. I will do what you suggest. This sounds respectful, but it also sounds passive. Now compare it to, I'll take care of this and update you by Friday. The second response shows clarity and ownership, even though the English is simple. Another challenge is feedback. In many cultures, feedback is indirect. Negative feedback is softened or avoided. In American workplaces, feedback is expected, both ways. If you never express concerns, never ask questions, never push back, people may assume you are comfortable with everything. Later, when problems appear, they may wonder why you didn't speak earlier. This can damage trust. There is also small talk. Many non-native speakers underestimate its importance. They see it as unnecessary, unprofessional, a waste of time. But in America, small talk builds working relationships. It creates familiarity. It creates comfort. When people feel comfortable with you, they listen more carefully when it matters. Workplace English is also about speed, not speaking fast, but responding at the right time. A delayed response can be seen as uncertainty. A very long explanation can feel like hesitation. Efficiency is often valued more than detail. This doesn't mean you must change your personality. It means you must understand the environment. Workplace English in America is less about correctness and more about participation, less about perfect sentences, and more about clear action. Once you understand this, work becomes less exhausting. Not because your English improved, but because your communication finally matches what the workplace is actually listening for. Part 5. Emotional English. What schools never teach. Most English classes teach you one thing very well: how to remove emotion from your language. You learn to be correct. You learn to be neutral. You learn to avoid sounding too much. And academically, that makes sense. But emotionally, it creates a problem. Because Americans communicate with emotion, even when they think they are being logical. Not loud emotion, not dramatic emotion, subtle emotion, interest, concern, commitment, distance. These signals are always present. When your English sounds emotionally flat, people don't know how to respond to you. They may think you are not interested, not invested, not fully present, even when you are. For example, consider this sentence. I understand. Grammatically perfect, very clear, but emotionally, it's empty. An American listener may wonder, do you agree? Are you finished? Are you frustrated? Now compare it to, I understand what you're saying, and I see why it matters. The English is still simple, but the emotional signal is clear. You are engaged. Many non-native speakers avoid emotional language because they are afraid of sounding unprofessional. But in American culture, emotion and professionalism are not opposites. Emotion shows that you care. Another example is enthusiasm. When Americans hear flat tone and short responses, they often assume low motivation. This is not fair, but it is common. So when you respond with, okay, sure, that's fine, your intention may be politeness or agreement, but the signal can feel distant. Emotional English does not mean exaggeration. It means adding small signals that guide the listener. Words like, I'm excited about this. I appreciate the effort here. I'm concerned about one part. These phrases are not emotional in your mind, but in American communication, they are essential. Another challenge is negative emotion. Many learners hide frustration or disagreement until it becomes overwhelming. But Americans expect controlled emotional honesty, saying, I'm a bit concerned about the timeline, is not complaining. It is participating. When you never show emotion, people don't know where you stand. And when people don't know where you stand, they don't know how to work with you. Emotional English is not about changing who you are. It's about allowing your intention to be heard. Once emotion enters your language, even gently, your English stops sounding distant and starts sounding human. Part 6. Accent, Identity, and Perception. Many non-native speakers believe their accent is the problem. They think, If I sounded more American, people would listen to me. So they work on pronunciation. They repeat sounds. They try to hide where they come from. But accent is rarely the real issue. In America, people hear accents all the time, at work, at school, in daily life. An accent may stand out, but it does not automatically reduce credibility. What actually shapes perception is how you carry your message. Two people can speak with the same accent and receive very different reactions. Why? Because listeners respond to confidence signals, not origin. Confidence is not about speaking fast. It's not about copying slang. And it's not about pretending to be someone else. It's about ownership. When you hesitate too much, when you apologize before you speak, when you soften every statement, people may assume you are unsure of your own value, not because of your accent, but because of your delivery. Another issue is identity. Many learners feel they must choose between being themselves and fitting in. They fear that sounding confident will make them seem rude, or that being direct will betray their culture. But American communication does not ask you to erase your identity. It asks you to show presence. Presence means you speak as someone who has a right to be in the conversation. You don't ask permission for every thought. You don't shrink your ideas before sharing them. This is especially important in professional settings. When your English carries constant self-correction, listeners may focus on your uncertainty, not your idea, and that creates a painful cycle. You feel judged, so you speak less, so you are noticed less. Breaking this cycle is not about sounding perfect. It's about aligning your language with how you see yourself. If you see yourself as a contributor, your English must reflect that role. Accent becomes secondary. People adjust quickly. When your message is clear, they lean in. When your intention is strong, and they remember you. When your presence is steady, your accent tells people where you're from. Your communication tells them who you are. When those two are in balance, English stops feeling like a barrier. It becomes a bridge. Part 7. What actually makes English work in America? After everything we've talked about, one question remains. If grammar is not enough, if fluency is not enough, if accent is not the real issue, then what actually makes English work in America? The answer is simpler than most people expect. English works when it reflects how you see yourself. In American culture, language is not just a tool for exchange. It's a signal of participation. When you speak, people listen for one thing above all. Are you here as a participant or as a guest? Guests speak carefully. They wait to be invited. They try not to disturb the room. Participants speak with purpose. They add. They respond. They take space naturally. Many non-native speakers communicate like guests, even after living in America for years. Not because they lack ability, but because no one ever told them. They were allowed to be participants. This is why improving English is not just about learning more. It's about changing how you use what you already know. Instead of asking, "Is this sentence correct?" you begin to ask, "What role am I playing right now?" Instead of focusing on not making mistakes, you focus on making impact. This doesn't mean becoming aggressive. It doesn't mean copying American personalities. It means aligning your language with intention. You speak when you have something to add. You state your point clearly. You respond instead of retreating. And when you don't know something, you say that, without shrinking. This shift is uncomfortable at first, because it requires you to let go. of the safety of perfect English. But once it happens, everything changes. Conversations feel lighter. Work feels less draining. You stop translating yourself in your head. English stops being something you perform. It becomes something you use. That is when people start responding differently. Not because your English suddenly improved, but because your presence became clear. In America, English works when it carries clarity, ownership, and direction. When your words do something, not just sound right, and that is a skill no textbook ever teaches. If you've listened this far, there's a good chance something here felt familiar. Not because your English is weak, but because you felt the gap between speaking correctly and being truly understood. The gap between knowing the language and feeling like you belong in the conversation. For a long time, many people blame themselves. They think they need more vocabulary, better pronunciation, more confidence. But the truth is quieter than that. Most non-native speakers don't struggle with English. They struggle with how English is used in America. They were trained to be careful. In a culture that expects clarity, they were trained to wait. In a culture that rewards participation, and no one ever explained the difference. If you've ever felt invisible in a meeting, or hesitant to speak even when you had something valuable to say, that wasn't a personal failure. It was a missing piece. This channel exists for that missing piece. Not to teach you more rules, not to chase perfect English, but to help you understand how English actually works. In real life, in real conversations, in America. If this way of thinking resonates with you, if you want to move beyond textbooks and start communicating with presence, you might want to stay. Consider subscribing, not because you have to, but because learning English this way changes how you experience daily life. And if this video helped you see your English differently, someone else may need to hear it too. Share it with them. Your English has never been the problem. You just needed a different lens. Thank you for listening.